In order to build a lot of the technology that we built, we have access to generative music. And we chose not to release it. We don't want to put it out to the world. This isn't what we're about. We are about making tools for music makers, not replacing them. And I think that different companies are going to have their stance, but our stance is very loud and clear.
That's Gregg Lehrman, the CEO and founder of Output, one of the leading software instrument developers of the last 10 years. Their innovative set of tools include instruments such as Signal, Exhale, and Arcade. Output's plugins have inspired music makers to use them on some of the biggest projects in the world, everything from Billie Eilish and Kendrick Lamar to Stranger Things and Game of Thrones. With Output's own AI tools beginning to roll out, Gregg and I talk about the benefits and potential dangers of AI for music and why your artistic individuality is going to become more important than ever.
There's more to it than just the music. People attach themselves to the people behind their favorite content. And it's all about what these artists stand for. It's about the community.
And that now is not the time to not stand out.
Don't try and be the jack of all trades. Don't try and sound like everybody. Be you. Because actually being you is much more valuable than being everybody. We don't need everybody's, we need people that are unique.
How collaboration is one of the most important tools you have for your success.
Accept the fact that you're not the best at everything. Go find people that are better than you at all the other areas and collaborate and see what you come up with.
And the impact he would ultimately like to have.
How do I help as many people as possible become and realize that they can become creative? And our tool for that is music.
This one is all about the landscape of creativity and what it's going to take to have a music career in the post-AI world. So whether you're excited for it or you're scared of it, you'll want to stick around for my interview with Gregg Lehrman. Gregg, you're a composer and the CEO of a pretty forward-thinking music software company, so I'd love to talk AI if you're down. It's obviously AI is coming for music. There's going to be a ton of tools for us. Some designed to inspire. I think Output's co-producer falls into that category, right? And then there's going to be tools that are going to save us time and probably some that are going to replace us. So what do you think the ethics behind AI music tool development should be like this early in the game?
Yeah, AI is it's scary, right? I'm a composer and a music producer first. That's what I did professionally for a long time. And so just like everybody else, I understand, and I'm also scared of where the world is going a little bit. In terms of ethics, I don't think anybody's really going to be able to regulate this very much. Technology is going to progress, and I don't think people are going to stand in the way. But I don't think I don't think it's as scary as we think. So first of all, you have to separate out. There's going to be AI specifically built for music makers it's there to help you, right? It's there to help you do the things that maybe you're not as good at or you don't want to do. And by the way, this isn't brand new. There's been technology that we as producers and writers have been relying on for a long time. If you're not a great mastering engineer, you might rely on a mastering plugin. If you've recorded yourself playing the guitar and it wasn't super tight, maybe you rely on things to tighten it up, right? We're always relying on tools. So yeah, I think in one bucket there will be tools made to help you do the things that maybe you're not as good at or that you don't want to do. And then of course and by the way, the product that we released, co-producer and specifically pack generator, falls in that bucket. Like we're at Output, we're not trying to build generative music tools. We're trying to build tools that help people to write and make music like yourself and like myself. Then there's the other bucket of generative music tools, right? Or sorry, just generative AI, generative music. And yeah, on one hand, there's going to be a lot more music out there, but I don't know that it's as threatening as we all think, because what I truly believe and what I've told many people at our company and elsewhere is that there's more to it than just the music. People attach themselves to the people behind their favorite content. And it's all about what these artists stand for. It's about the community. It's about being able to see them live. And a good example would be Taylor Swift, right? I mean, she's an amazing artist. She's an amazing writer. But I think part of what makes her as successful as she is the fact that she stands for something and she builds community around that. And so it's hard to imagine prompt-based music having ideology and meaning and being able to build community. And so Really, when I think about it, sure, there's gonna be more people making music. There will be some scenarios where generative music might replace what used to be made by people, and that's frustrating and scary. But I think the large majority of music that we listen to is going to be human made and human produced.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I kind of have this theory that it's going to make the sandbox like way bigger. More people are going to be able to like create music that maybe couldn't have done it before, but it's going to make the people that are really great at it, I think, a smaller percentage. And that community aspect, I think, is really key for artists to really start thinking about how, it's like that thousand true fans. Are you familiar with that concept? You-
Mhm.
it's like, you don't need a million fans, you need 1,000 fans that love everything you do, and you can have a sustainable career. I can't remember who coined that term, but the community aspect is very, very poignant. I think you're on that.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying is what I believe. Yeah. And, when you think about musicians or producers, engineers, you know, as they are entering a world where there are more and more AI tools, right? What's their path? What should they do? Should they ignore it? Should they jump into it? And I really think that we have to look at this in a similar way to how programmers are looking at tools that help people code, which is, in the next 5 years or so, programmers are going to be able to move faster and be more prolific than ever if they're utilizing some of these tools.
Yeah.
And it's not like the average person's just going to be able to code. Down the line, that certainly might change. But what I think is, for music makers, you have these tools. It can help you move faster. It can help you be more prolific. It can help you spend more of your time focusing on the parts of music production that you want to focus on. If a writer wants to spend their time writing and not producing, if a producer wants to spend their time putting together beats and samples and they don't want to spend their time mixing, right? Things like that, you can really focus on what is most important to you. So it's not to say that you have to use these tools. I think it's a slight disadvantage at some point if you're not just based on speed. But at the same time, I play in a band and we get together once a week and sit in a room and we just have some instruments and there's no computers and no AI, no technology. And we write some music and we record it from time to time and we play out. And
Nice.
I don't think that needs to change. I think it's like anybody can make music whatever way they want. And if they want to embrace some tools, go for it. And if they don't, like, you don't have to use it. It's totally up to you. It's meant to be fun and creative.
I kind of see this like resurgence of like of rock bands, and I kind of hope that as AI kind of takes over a little bit. It's a horrible phrase to say takes over. It's like very Terminator-esque, right? That that live music becomes like so much more fulfilling. It's like we got to go see what they're like in real life because they could have made this thing with a prompt. Like, what do they like when they play down the street? So I think it's going to be a different world in 5 years. It's going to be wild. But I heard there was an interview. I don't know if you saw it. It was on Colin and Samir's YouTube podcast, and it was with Jacob Collier. And he brought up this really interesting point when they started talking about AI that I'd never thought of. And you kind of just touched on it. What happens to creativity when your ideas can become like instantaneous? Like if you want to make a crazy sound, and you can just type it into your computer and you get this crazy sound and then you can do whatever you want with it. Like how empowering is that? It's pretty wild to think about it like that.
Yeah. But on the flip side, it might even make it more challenging. I don't know about you, but the more options I have when I start making music, the harder it is to write music. I'm a fan of like Brian Eno and some of his ideology, which is limitations actually help you to be creative. My old palette and when I would have Logic open, I was a Logic user back in the day, and I would have, all these computers and, just hundreds of tracks ready to go. And I would sit there and be like, there's so many different directions I can go. So sometimes more is too much. And I don't know about you. I'm like, just give me like one or two instruments and let me start there. And, let me really think about what instruments I want to use to begin with. But yeah, I mean, it can kind of go either direction.
That is true. I think about like all the plugins when I'm mixing and I just scroll through and you spend like 20 minutes comparing compressors when you really just need to use the first one. But yeah, you just got to make that decision. So I know you said you were a composer. I think most people know that you were a composer. I see a danger for TV and film with the generative AI stuff. Do you agree or disagree? Do you think it could potentially hurt people that want to get into licensing?
Yeah, I do, but not at the highest levels. So I think when you talk about bigger films, bigger TV shows, things that need to be done well, recording live instruments, scoring something is really hard to do. It's going to be easier to make a generative song. Like I would say from the, in the order, making a generative instrumental song is easier than making something that has vocals and lyrics that sounds good. Making a film score or TV score that really understands the nuance of what's going on and underscores it in the right way, that's really hard,
Hmm.
you know, because you don't want to always be so on the nose, right? You don't want to, it's scary moment, boom, scary music. It's like you have to know when things are coming in and when things need to go out, and there's a creative and human element to that. And so I think on one end you have kind of knowing how music plays a role, orchestral music, getting the nuance of soloists. And so I just think it's going to be challenging. So I think where you're going to have some issues is starting with social media, maybe some content on TikTok, maybe some content on Instagram, some YouTube videos, things where maybe that music background is very low in volume and you're not hearing it as much, and it's just kind of a bit more of a bed. Yeah, I can see that replacing it. And unfortunately, there are people that are going to lose out on a bit of work. I used to do a lot of music that was licensed into these things, and so I'm in that same boat. And frankly, in order to build a lot of the technology that we built, we have access to generative music, and we chose not to release it. We don't want to put it out to the world. This isn't what we're about. We are about making tools for music makers, not replacing them. And I think that different companies are going to have their stance. But our stance is very loud and clear, and that's what we're trying to do is help people to be creative, not to take jobs away from musicians.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the way that hopefully every company in music that is, made started by musicians as Output is, hopefully that's the stance that they all stick to. Let's talk about Output a little bit. I know you started Output you as a composer because you were looking for solutions for your own workflow, if I understand correctly. And I feel like a lot of people
Yeah.
wouldn't do that because that feels difficult or it sounds like too hard. What made you the kind of person that was like, I'm going to do this crazy shit, let's go? Like how did the idea come to life?
It's a great question. I'm the kind of person that loves jumping into things without understanding how hard or how complicated they are, and overwhelming myself and then regretting it. And uh, it's the adventure, right? That's what excites me. It's jumping into the unknown. Yes, I was a working composer and music producer, and I got to a point where I was getting frustrated with the writing process. I was getting frustrated with my music, and I felt like I would be compensated by the more music I wrote. The more I wrote, the more money I made. And it wasn't like I was making a fortune or anything, but sometimes you were taking on a couple TV shows at once, or you were trying to write a bunch of music for a publisher, or you know, the more you wrote, the more music that was out there, the more potential you had to make money. And I didn't want that. I wanted to go just focus on being as creative as I could. Um, and I wanted some tools that inspired me. And I just felt like a lot of what was out there, there's a lot of great plugins and instruments, but I wanted to be inspired. And so I had an idea for our first tool, which became Rev. And before I built it, I actually called friends that worked at other companies and gave them the idea. I was like, "Hey, can you guys build this? Like, this is something that I think would be cool and would inspire me." And I asked everybody to do it, and they wouldn't do it. And so I said, "Okay, well, how hard could it be? Right? Making a plugin and to begin with a contact instrument can't be that hard."
Right, right.
And I was completely naive, but Output's for those that don't know Output, we launched 10 years ago with this first program, Rev, that we're talking about. And we're, 10 years later, we are a leader in music creation software, and we build tools by musicians for musicians. And um, we sort of think of ourselves as the secret sauce behind so much of the music, not to sit here and ramble about us, but I think it's important for the people that don't actually know who we are. Um, we're, if you think about it, Billie Eilish and Kendrick Lamar and Beyonce and Coldplay and Justin Timberlake and Drake and Bjork and all these amazing people are using our tools on a regular basis to make their music, and film scores like Stranger Things and Game of Thrones and Westworld. So we make some great tools, um, and that's kind of been our focus from day one, is how do we make products that we ourselves would want.
Yeah.
And we've made plugins and we've made desks, we made all kinds of crazy things, and it's always been about, all of us are musicians, what excites us, what do we wish we would have,
Mm-hmm.
and and then how do we make it? And then as we're building it, if people at the company are excited about what we're building and they stay at night to use it and make music with it, we know we're onto something. And if they're like, nah, I'm good, then we cannot.
Is the majority of the company all musicians?
At this point, no. Almost everybody, but not everybody.
Okay.
Early on, every single person, it was a requirement that you were not just a musician, but actively making music on computers. You had to be recording, you had to be producing. We've grown a lot. And so there are a handful of people that are very passionate about music, but don't actually write or produce. But part of joining Output is you gotta learn some of the basics. You have to start writing and producing a bit, and people do. And at the company, we have people that have formed bands and people that have made singles and people that have done actually pretty well and left us because they got some record deal with with like Sony or Universal or something. I mean, it happens. So we have a team that is very, very passionate about music. And as you can imagine, and this isn't, just our company. I think if you're getting into the world of music creation, you're getting into it because you love making music.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. I worked for Capitol Studios, which is in the Capitol Records building. And, most of that building was in a band or, wanted to be an artist. And everybody in this business is somehow, we all got started somehow, started playing guitar and realized I wasn't good. So I started recording music. Oh,
Totally.
yeah.
Did you ever get to use all the underground reverb chambers down there?
Oh, I've been in them. Yes, they're amazing.
Yeah.
I love those things. And the plugins that are out there are they're very close. That building's currently closed. Did you know that?
I did not. That's kind of depressing.
It's earthquake retrofit. Hopefully, they'll get that finished.
Okay, so it'll come back out.
Yeah. But yeah, currently no Capitol Studios, sadly, at the moment of this filming. But I did want to say that everything you said about the early instruments you guys were making, I always kind of thought of when I was using like Exhale and Signal and stuff. I always thought of your stuff as like song starters, and I think Arcade's kind of the same way. It's kind of this like playable interface, and it's like, what I want to start an idea and I want to start it quick. So I think that the way you guys have put your packaging together, your presets and your choices, I think you really are living true to your motto there. So just props on that.
I appreciate it.
But I wanted to ask you
Thanks.
about those early days. Are there any parallels that you can draw for people starting a music career with starting that company? Is there advice that you'd give to somebody that is about to set out into music?
Yeah, absolutely. They're both really hard. I don't want to be that blunt, but
it's true. It's true.
Look, it's totally true. I think you have to be okay with rejection, and you have to have unbelievable perseverance. And I don't think it matters if you're trying to make music or start a company, it's the same. And in many ways, making music for a living prepared me to start a company, because when you're trying to make music for a living, it's just 99% rejection, 1% success, and you hope that 1% of success pays for everything else and allows you to pay your bills and eat food and have a place to live. It is hard. what I've found over the years, I was brought up with a bunch of friends that were all music makers. We all moved to LA kind of right after college. The people that had some talent and a ton, at least some talent,
Yeah.
right? And a tremendous amount of perseverance have made full livings making music. And a lot of people are really successful. And you just don't realize how hard it is, how much rejection you have to be okay with, how many years you kind of have to grind it out. And so if you're willing to do that, even knowing how hard it is, and if you're willing to do it, success is very possible. It's just a little harder than you think, and many people give up when the going gets tough. And I think you have to be willing to ride it out. And it's the exact same thing with a company.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it's also a ton of fun to write music for a living, and it's a ton of fun to start a company. And I have zero regrets of doing two things that are really hard but really fulfilling, and being able to collaborate with amazing people. So I would say that's the third piece: is collaborate with people that are more talented than you in areas that you maybe lack some skills. When I was writing music, I had a whole group of musicians and arrangers and producers, people that I would go to for various things to help work on my tracks. I had no problem collaborating with people. I thought it was fun. It made my music better. If we could be in a room together doing it, that was preferred. And when it comes to a company, one person can't do everything. You need great people around you, and the quality of these people and the way in which you collaborate is everything. So accept the fact that you're not the best at everything. Go find people that are better than you at all the other areas, and collaborate and see what you come up with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, all those points. Everybody should go back and listen to all those again. It really is. I like to describe it sometimes as like last person standing. You're like, that person makes every record. You're like, yeah, because they never quit. I think when people
Yeah.
leave,
Yeah.
especially in music school or, whatever, and they go start their career, I think they think that it happens really quickly. You're like, oh, like for me, for example, I thought I'd be like mixing hit records when I was like 24 or 25 or something like that. And, I was still getting coffee and patching cables and, had no clue what I was doing. It just takes
Yeah.
so much longer than you think. And you're gonna fuck up everything once, hopefully
Yeah.
once, only once. Um,
Only once.
but so you said collaboration, and I just had this weird thought about AI. So like the world is like become way more remote. I like nobody comes
Mhm.
to my studio to finish a mix. Everything is remote collaboration now. What happens when AI really inserts itself into the equation? People start collaborating with AI. And it's going to be weird because I agree that collaboration is so important and you should collaborate with somebody that's better than you. But if the person's better than you is the computer, is that the same? Is it the same? Will that work?
I mean, look, on one hand, whatever is going to make your music be what you want it to be is probably a good thing, right? You're trying to you
Mm,
have this vision of what this
yeah.
music could be, and how you want to express yourself and get something out to the world. So from the standpoint of a musician, I don't necessarily care if I'd rather collaborate with other musicians, but if I can collaborate with the program and it can help in a certain way and make the music a little better, I would be open to it. But I don't know if it's so different. I mean, and we talk about AI like it's this thing that's, coming, and it is, of course. But there's been AI in a lot of our programs for a long time. I mean, a lot of the tools, I'm not going to get into specifics, but they recommend things to you. And where do you think that comes from? They're understanding what kind of music you make and what types of things you're searching for and what might be complementary or similar. And they're making these
Yeah.
recommendations. And those recommendations could be in the form of raw samples. It could be chord packs, MIDI packs. It could be presets, right? So in some way, we've all been kind of going down that path a little bit, maybe without even realizing.
Yeah.
And what we care about is, how do we spend the majority of our time doing the fun part and being creative and not spending all of our time searching for sounds, searching through banks of folders. I mean, I used to spend hours a day trying to just find the right kick or the right snare or the right shakers. I mean, it was, I couldn't stand it. It was like, I just want to write music. I don't want to, production is so time consuming if
Oh
you
yeah.
want things to sound good. And I mean, I don't, look, I'm not trying to bring everything back to our products, but the whole reason that we were trying to build, co-producer, and I can get to this in a bit. Co-producers are technology and kind of a product that's going to be coming later this year. But as elements are ready, we're starting to release them. So we released something called Pack Generator. And Pack Generator is basically text prompt to a sample pack that's yours. It's royalty free. You get it forever. And, it's not trained on anything that was, it's all not copyrighted material. It's basically all our own internal, our audio, right? We have one of the biggest catalogs of privately owned and privately created content in the world. And so we put this together so that people have the ability to try and find what they're looking for quickly. And it means that you don't have to spend hours looking for things, because you can actually say, hey, what would um, I want something that sounds like Abbey Road, right? I want something, and it's about how do I find that palette.
Yeah.
So I just think that when it comes to collaboration and it comes to AI, it's about finding the things that you want as quickly as possible. And I think that that doesn't necessarily replace calling your friend who's a violin player and saying, hey, would you track something on my song? Like I still would do that over going to AI any day, but I think if you're spending hours looking for a specific sample, there's probably a better way to do it.
You kind of, I should have brought this up earlier, but you kind of sparked it when you said, you talked about the huge catalog of music that you guys have built internally. I don't know if you've seen some of these. I think NVIDIA, I can't remember what it's called, is just is working on an AI language model that'll run on their, obviously on their CPU chip in your computer. Um, but it allows you to have that trained on your data. And there's another program called Notion that will, scan your notes and basically train an AI off of your data. So the idea to have like your catalog of music and to train a model on your own creation, like if Max Martin were to create the Max Martin internal AI and he used that to create his own music, that's kind of a really interesting space where you're really taking advantage of the possibilities of this technology without like really chopping jobs off. It becomes your own thing. Did that even make any sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I've seen, look, there are companies that are doing this. There are artists that already announced that they're making generative music based on their own catalogs. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited to see where it goes. At the same time, I'm like, do I really want a catalog of my own music that, is being generated by a computer? I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
what excites me is writing and making music. I still like, I want the goosebumps that come with actually creating something. I want to be, in the driver's seat. I want to make music. Other people maybe not. And so I think it's open to whatever excites you as a musician. And and I think when you look back in history, people have always tried to push the envelope,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And experiment with things. And I think this is new technology you can experiment with to see what you can come up with. I mean, you can collaborate with a future version of yourself. Like maybe that excites you. For me, as I said, I still really like, I mean, we have a KPI at the company, the speed to the goosebump moment. Like what we're trying to do is get people to goosebumps. We're trying to get them to that moment where they feel like, holy crap, I just made something and it's awesome. And my hair is tingling on my skin. And like I'm excited,
Yeah.
right? Because what we're about is the creative process. And look, there's a reason none of our products have ever been, we haven't just recreated old compressors and old reverbs and perfectly sampled pianos and orchestras to like recreate what's out there. Our company is 100% focused on the creative process and helping people make something that excites them. And so it's a different path for us. We still want people to enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, what's that process like, taking an idea from, you know, sitting around the table to releasing it? How long do you guys work on some of your instruments? Obviously, arcade is a big focus, and co-produce is a big focus. But like, you know, the earlier ones like Exhale, how long does something like that take to create?
Back then, they were probably a year
Oh wow.
each, and that was the focus of the entire company. So we didn't, certainly when we started off, it wasn't like we had lots of different teams and people working on different, it was a small company. And so we were heads down working on something, and then we were heads down pushing it out to the world. And then we were heads down on the next thing and pushing it out. You know, how we started products then hasn't changed that much. It still starts with prioritization. And prioritization is probably the most important and challenging thing for any company because there's no shortage of good ideas.
Hmm.
A list of 200 great ideas for plugins and music tools and applications and hardware. Everybody who joins has great ideas. And we've got ideas from the beginning. The challenge is you're limited in your resources and your time. And if you want to make something really good, you can't do everything. And part of why we made Arcade back in the day was we were heading down a path that was actually comparable to what I was explaining before about music, where the more plugins and instruments we put out, the more money we would make. But we were being rewarded for the speed in which we could do something. And I felt like that was very counter to
Mm.
quality. And what we always wanted to focus on more than anything, and if you know our products, I think you would agree, quality is really important to us. We want to make sure that it's something that we're really, really proud of. So part of Arcade was how do we build not just a plugin, but an ecosystem where we could continue to evolve it, continue to make it better and better, and make it into something that we loved and we were proud of. When you think of Ableton, which is different, right? It's not plug-in Ableton Live. We're talking it's a DAW, but like they got to just work on that and make it better and better and better. And we missed that, and we wanted to do that. We wanted to focus on it. So yeah, it used to be maybe a year or so on each product. Then we spent years on Arcade, and then we haven't had new releases in a little while. This year, we have two big new product releases coming out that are completely separate from Arcade. And, they're both really exciting. And I mean, we're not too public about each of them yet, but let's just say one is co-producer, which is more in the realm of how can you utilize AI and samples to help you do some of the things that you don't want to do, or to find the things that you want to find, and what are the ways in which you can do it, ways that have never been done before. So we're really excited about that. The other release we haven't been public about, but point being, it's an exciting year for us, and product development is hard. It's really hard. I'm happy to dive as far into product development as you want and kind of go over it, but I don't know if everybody wants to know.
I mean, I like to go all over. I'm always up for a tangent. But I did want to,
I'm
I
down.
did want to mention that there's like a parallel between the community aspect that you mentioned earlier, and then your approach to Arcade. Like you wanted to have this thing that you could develop that people could like be involved in and be committed to. And I really want to hammer home to people that are listening that like your community is like the most important thing you could be focusing on right now, I think. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if you're starting out today and you're trying to build yourself up as either a producer, an artist, a composer, whatever it is. I think what's so important is, first of all, that you differentiate yourself from everybody else. Like, don't try and be the jack of all trades. Don't try and sound like everybody. Be you. Because actually being you is much more valuable than being everybody.
Yeah.
We don't need everybody's, we need people that are unique. So I think standing out, sounding very unique, and you should be able to hear a song or a score of yours from another room. People should know that it's you instantaneously just because it's so unique.
Yeah.
And then I think you have to start building community in whatever way you can. It could be through live performance. It could be through social media. It could be through TikTok, like whatever we're talking about. But you kind of have to develop that. And the last piece is, I think you need to stand for something.
Mm.
You don't need to, but it really helps. If you have some kind of ideology, if are you the romantic person? Are you the nature lover? Are you the artist? Are you like, what are you? What do you stand for? Like, what moves you? And can you connect with other like-minded people?
Yeah.
And I see that working really successfully. And so I think you kind of put those pieces together, and what ends up happening is you build community, as you said, and then that community, they support you.
Yeah.
They'll support you through thick and thin. And just as you said before, you don't need millions. 1,000, you know, 1,000 people that love your music and love what you stand for is probably all you need to get going.
Yeah. A question on the ideology. I'm a sucker for like a business book or business podcast. And so like, having that thing that runs a company is like, is so common. But if you're an artist, you're a producer, you're a mixer, how do you think you find that ideology? Do you sit down and come up with it yourself? Do you ask people how they view you? How do you think somebody could figure out what that is for themselves?
It's hard. I found for us that we had it from the beginning and didn't know we had it. And it took interest, it was like introspection, reflection to understand what it was. And it was really obvious. Like when we were starting, we just wanted to make tools that when you sat down, it was like, you played that first preset, you were like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like, oh my, this is, you wanted to immediately hit save as and start writing this new track, that every preset, right? And in some way we thought, hey, we're here to like solve writer's block for some people. Over time, we were able to draw a trend. And the trend was we only wanted to make things that inspired people to be creative. So I would say for us, it was kind of there. And I think for so many people, it's already there in you. And the challenge it's not coming up with ideology. It's not coming up with your mission. It's figuring out what that mission is that you already have deep within
Mm.
you. And I think you need to kind of pull yourself, up a level and look objectively at the decisions you've made and the things that excite you and what you're passionate about and people that you've surrounded yourself with, and start looking at what are the themes that are recurring. And it's not easy. And I think it's totally fine to work with mentors and collaborators. And I've had mentors and consultants that I've brought on from day one at Output, because I'm the first to say, I don't know everything and I'm not sure what I'm doing. And there's so many areas that I'm jumping into that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I love pulling, and sometimes these aren't paid things. These are just friends and favors. And you're pulling somebody in and say, hey, I need help. Like, this is something I'm trying to think through. Help me think through it, because outside perspective, usually it makes it really obvious. And when you land on some of the things that excite you, you know that they're right. You feel it in your gut. I'm a big believer in trust your gut.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. And I totally agree with mentors, masterminds, friend. Like, there's a lot to having people in your circle that you can get honest feedback from. Because so many people are like, "Yo, what do you think of
Yeah.
this track?" And they're like, "That's great," and they don't like it. But that doesn't help you. Like, you're not helping your friend if you're not going to be like, "Yeah, it's not your best track. I think or you're playing it safe." Like, that's more helpful. Just tell them it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, go for it.
So going back to probably 2006, I always shared a studio with other music makers, right? And part of it was you're sitting in a room by yourself all day. It's like, it's lonely, it's boring,
Yeah.
right? I needed other people around. So we would go in, we'd get like a studio, and we would each like take a room. There was one time, and I don't know the gentleman's name, he was new, but he heard me working on this song over and over and over, and it was driving him nuts because it must have been like on loop for 8 hours. And he finally knocked on the door and he came in. He's like, "What is going on here?" I was like, I'm struggling, like it's close, but like I can't figure out what that secret sauce. Like, what am I missing? And he said, "Okay, I'm gonna help you." I said, "Okay." He said, what is your favorite element in this song? And it was like this melody. It was like, this melody, this is everything. He goes, great. Save as, delete it. I'm like, delete it? This is my absolute, like, this is the essence of the song. He goes, delete it. You're making an irrational response, and you're building this around something that is emotional and maybe it shouldn't be there, right? Because if you're struggling this much, it's like you're attached to it and you shouldn't be. So he goes, let's just try this. Delete your favorite part. And I'm telling you, 10 minutes later, the song was done. He was absolutely right. So
That's fascinating.
Yeah, having outside perspective, having people that could show you that sometimes you have an emotional connection or attachment to something that maybe you shouldn't. I think that's a really valuable thing, and I think it's good to be transparent with your friends that are asking for advice. Don't lie to them and tell them what they want to hear. Like, help them if they're asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree. That story is amazing. That's really good. Take your favorite part out.
It's true, totally true.
That's awesome. Well, I have two questions I ask everybody before we go, but before those two, I think I saw that your first gig was working for Hans Zimmer. True?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
true.
A, how'd you get that gig? And B, was it epic?
Yeah, so I graduated college and I live in New York, and I was a confused student, right? I was a double major in music and business, and I graduated, and there's opportunities to go work in finance and actually make money. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to write music for a living. And so I moved back in with my parents, and I turned my old bathroom into the recording room, and I turned the bedroom into kind of like my little writing room, and I would sleep on the side. And I was working on my demo, and I was temping over at, I think it was NYU School of Dentistry during the days to actually make enough money to live. And I was a member of what was called the Film Music Job Wires, Film Music Network. I don't think it's around anymore. Maybe it is, but there used to be job wires that would go around. And there was a job wire that just said, major composer looking for assistant, and it didn't give any information because you had to submit it directly to the Film Music Network. And I just started calling every composer's office I can get a hold of. I eventually, I called Hans Zimmer's office and I spoke to the assistant and I said, are you guys looking for the assistant? And they said, yeah, actually, yeah, we are. I said, okay, is there any chance you can put this resume directly on his desk? And they're like, no, absolutely not. And I begged and pleaded. I was like, please, you don't understand. This is make or break. And I really kind of went all in. And she didn't put it on his desk, but she put it on the right-hand person's desk. And I got a call that night, actually, which they didn't realize I was in New York. And so they called me. It was probably like 11 o'clock at night. Like, we don't know how you did this. We don't know how you got this directly on our desk. But if you're interested, you come in for an interview. And I was like, oh, great. I'll be there in a week. I'm in New York. I'll fly out. They're like, no. Either you're here tomorrow or you're not. So I got on I told my parents, I remember waking them and telling them that night that I have to go get on a plane. And they took me to the airport like 5 a.m. the next day. I got on the first flight. By like 10 or 11, I was over at remote control, which is Hans's office. And they interviewed me and they said, all right, we'll give you a shot starting right now. Like, they were impressed that I kind of made it there. And I had a cousin who lived there in Venice, and he put me up on his couch for a number of months. And that began my journey out to California, and I've lived in California ever since.
That's an awesome story. That's so good. So good. I love that. I love that.
Sometimes you gotta hustle a little bit to make it in this space. You gotta break through. You gotta have some grit. You gotta get in the rooms and take the meetings. And I mean, I've lied my way into a number of meetings with bigger people just to like be able to meet them and talk to them. And I realize now, looking back on that, it's a little ridiculous, but I also think it's what you had to do to break through. It was so hard to break through
Yeah. Well,
that you kind of have to.
it set you apart. That's the only reason you got that interview, is because you figured out how to get the resume on the desk. And then the fact that you made it to the interview,
Yeah.
they were like, well, I mean, we have to hire him. He made it. So, I mean,
Yeah, it just flew across the
yeah,
country.
that's all. So this was like early 2000s, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
beginning of 2003.
Yeah, I came to LA in 2006. And the studio scene was similar. It was like, I'm coming out there. Do you have any openings? Like, not if you don't live here. Come, call again when you live here. And okay, cool, we like you. Can you start at 4? Like that. I mean, that's how it was. I don't know if it's still like that because luckily I'm not looking for a job in a studio anymore. But it was necessary to just be able to drop everything and make it happen. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's still the same. And I don't know how many of the listeners here are active music makers and professional or just starting out, but the biggest challenge that you face is figuring out how to make a living while you're trying to build your career as a musician, right? I mean, that's the trick, right?
Yep.
Unless you have like a trust fund that you can live off of, it's like, I don't have money and nobody's paying me to write music. How do I do this? How do I make this transition? And I think the best path is to work for people that are doing what you want to do, for studios, for companies. Get in the music space however you can. If you have to move, you got to move. If you got to, if you can do things remote, that's great. But you need to be in it. And as you're in it, you learn more and you meet people and you build that network and you build that community. And as that community grows, they find more and more success and you're part of that. And so I can't stress enough how important it is to dive into the music industry in whatever way you can, whether it's apprenticeships, internships, assistant roles, whatever it is that you can do, because that really helps you to get your foot in the door and actually make a living in the industry that you want, and often helps you to kind of, make that path forward for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would tell a story to support that, but you nailed it. So, yeah, that's super important. It goes back to the community that you were talking about. It's all there, and it's like as everybody goes through their career, they all want to keep working with the people that they're working with, and it's like this rising tide where they work with their friends that they were cleaning bathrooms with in the studio, and that's just how it is. So, that's awesome. Let me hit you with these last questions because I know you have a busy day. You probably got to get back to work. First one was there a time in your career that you chose to redefine what success meant to you?
Hmm. I mean, I redefine what success means to me like daily. uh, I I know that seems crazy. I mean, the yardstick always moves. When I was young, success meant I wanted to make music for a living,
Yeah.
right? And then it was I wanted to have enough money to have even just a modest lifestyle. I wanted to pay rent and eat food and, maybe go back to New York every now and then and visit friends and family. And when Output launched, it was a bootstrap company, right? It all came out of my pocket when we started. I had no investors or anything like that. And I was I used all the money that I had. I just wanted it to pay for itself and be sustainable. And then I wanted it to help people that were serious music makers like myself and like you find inspiration. And now it's, how do I help as many people as possible, you know, become and realize that they can become creative. And, our tool for that is music. But that's what I'm trying to do, is help people realize that there's creativity within them and they can tap into that. And I believe that it makes them uh, better people, and it makes the world a better place. So, after that, I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be figuring out uh, the right balance of life and work is really, really important to me. And so I don't think success is just purely how much can you do with work. I think it's also, are you there for your kids and your spouse? Am I there for my wife? Am I there for my family? I don't believe that people should stand and or sit in front of computers all day long. I think it's like you got to find the balance in life. And so that's probably, success today is, am I happy? Do I have the right balance of things in my life? And am I able to make a difference and make, creativity something that more and more people can access?
Yeah. Love it. Love it.
Sorry, that was probably longer than you.
No, but there was
Longer than
there
you
was a lot of
expected.
really important stuff in there. So I love that. And the last question, this one might be a little tougher for you because you have unreleased products, but just answer this question however you want to answer it. What is your current biggest goal, And what is the next smallest step you're going to take to go towards that goal?
Well, it's really what I was just saying. The biggest goal that we have today is enabling as many people as possible to be creative. And that's what we're working towards with our next product is how do we make music creation more accessible to everybody? So yeah, I mean, the next step is that when we wrap, I'm going to jump on another call and go over some design review and start playing with it. Because when you're building products, there's nothing more important than just opening it up every day and playing with it and seeing, does this feel right? So that's my next step is diving in and seeing if I'm inspired, and if I am, putting it in front of other people and seeing if they're inspired, and if not, coming back to the drawing board. That's what we do day in and day out at Output.
That's awesome. So you still get to make a little bit of music using your own tools and use that as the bar for whether it's working on how you feel.
Oh yeah. No, I'm still deeply involved in playing with our tools and making music. I'm not making music professionally right now and haven't been in the last few years, but at some point I drew a circle on a piece of paper and I said I can be a good musician, composer, producer. I can be good at that. I can be a good parent, and I can be a good leader at Output. And I have to pick two of them, because if I try doing all three, I'm going to be bad at all of them. And for a while I was trying to do all three, and I felt like I was letting myself down across the board. And I had to take a break writing professionally and scoring films and TV shows and things like that. And that doesn't mean I'm done forever. It meant that at that point in time, focusing on my family and focusing on Output were the two most important things. And I don't regret that at all. But
yeah,
I still like making music, and I still like, playing with our tools.
What's the prioritization that you mentioned earlier? You have to.
That's it.
There you go.
There you go. You have to have prioritization. It's the hardest thing and the most important thing.
So hard. Like I feel like everything that I know that I should be doing, you're always like, I'm gonna do this thing. Wait, no. I have to remember to go do this thing. But anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and as you get older and have more, you have family and obligations, and you have just less and less time. And so time is what is most important. It's like how you spend that, nothing more important.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah.
This has been amazing. Please, Output's really easy to find on the internet, but share with anybody whatever you want, how they can find you guys, stuff you want to, anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Output.com is our website. You can find us on Instagram, on TikTok. My name is Gregg Lehrman, GreggLehrman. You can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, or I haven't been doing a ton of social media, but I should probably do more. And we're around. Check out our products. Co-producer, we just released Pack Generator. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. Whatever you type in, you get free samples that you can use forever in your production. So it's definitely worth checking out. And I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. And Travis, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking the time. I love this. This was a good hang. That's it for this week's episode of Progressions. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Be sure to check out all the links and resources mentioned in the episode down below in the video description or in your podcast show notes. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, please leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps the show so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop any thoughts or questions about the episode down below. Let's keep the conversation going. For those of you watching, you'll be getting a link to another episode you might enjoy popping up somewhere right about now. And for those of you listening, check out the YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see y'all next time.